Σε ένα μεταβαλλόμενο γεωστρατηγικό περιβάλλον, το εμπόριο δεν είναι ένα απλό εργαλείο, αλλά μια δύναμη ισχύως της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης. Πολλαπλασιάζει την θέση μας στον κόσμο και επιτρέπει να αυξηθεί η ανταγωνιστικότητα της ευρωπαϊκής οικονομίας. Σήμερα είχαμε τη δυνατότητα να συζητήσουμε τις προκλήσεις στην εταιρική σχέση μεταξύ ΗΠΑ και Ευρώπης, τη δυναμική των σχέσεων της Κίνας με την Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση, αλλά και τις υπόλοιπες συμφωνίες στις οποίες έχουμε επιδοθεί το τελευταίο χρονικό διάστημα. Όσον αφορά τη διατελετική μας συμμαχία, είναι η πιο σημαντική φυσικά και η Ευρώπη πάντοτε προτεραιοποιεί τη συνεργασία και όχι την αντιπαράθεση. Παρ' όλα αυτά, με ενότητα είμαστε έτοιμοι να υπερασπιστούμε τα ευρωπαϊκά συμφέροντα αν αυτό χρειαστεί. Σε σχέση με την Κίνα συζητήσαμε τις προτεραιότητες της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης από τη μία μεριά και από την άλλη προσβλέπουμε σε μια σύνοδο κορυφής στις επόμενες εβδομάδες η οποία θα ξεπεράσει το συμβολισμό και θα φέρει απτά αποτελέσματα. Τέλος, οι συμφωνίες με τελευταία την χθεσινή πολιτική συμφωνία μεταξύ Ινδονησίας και Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης
Good afternoon and welcome to the press conference following the FAC trade. On stage we have the Danish Minister for Foreign Affairs, Mr. Lars Løkke Rasmussen, and the Commissioner for Trade and Economic Security, Mr. Maros Sefcovic. As always, we will start by a brief statement by the Minister and the Commissioner, and afterwards we'll open the floor for questions. Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I want to thank you very much, Maros, for being here with me today on this, my maiden voyage, chairing a council meeting after Denmark took over the EU presidency 1st of July. Today, we discussed the state of play and prospects for EU-US trade relations, including possible EU countermeasures, in light of the ongoing negotiations for an agreement in principle, as well as President Trump's announcement over the weekend of 30% general tariffs on the EU from the 1st of August, which I must say member states find absolutely unacceptable and unjustified. We are committed to continuing working with the US on a negotiated outcome. It has to be a mutually beneficial agreement on terms that are acceptable to both sides. At the same time, we are prepared for all possible scenarios. If no satisfactory solutions can be found, the EU remains ready to react, and that includes robust and proportionate countermeasures if required. And there was a strong feeling in the room of unity, so this statement is a statement which unites all of us. We also discussed the EU's ongoing trade negotiations with other partners in a time of rising protectionism and geopolitical uncertainty. It is more important than ever that we in the EU do not turn our backs to the rest of the world, but quite doing the opposite. Instead, continue to seek new and alternative strategic partnerships and expand and diversify our trade relations. And this includes the agreements with Mercosur and Mexico that we need to get over the finishing line as soon and as possible. It will be a major priority for the Danish presidency and something we want to achieve before the end of the year. We also welcome the political agreement reached yesterday on a free trade agreement with Indonesia. And we have many more trade agreements in the pipeline in Asia, among the Gulf countries and elsewhere. At today's meeting, ministers underlined the importance of accelerating the ongoing bilateral trade negotiations, where there are right now, unfortunately, question marks over the 13% of world trade, including the US. We must make even greater efforts to grow the 87% of trade with the rest of the world. And then finally, we also discussed China and our trade relations. In many, many ways, China remains an economic competitor and a systemic rival. But China is also a partner with whom we need to maintain and possibly even increase our cooperation. I look very much forward to welcoming trade ministers and the Commission to an informal meeting in Denmark in October. Well, we have to see whether we can postpone next meeting until October, but we plan for an informal meeting in October. But until then, I am assured that you, Maros, and your great team will continue your hard work promoting and protecting European trade investments. And as a presidency, we, of course, stand ready to convene the Council whenever needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Commissioner, please.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon for me as well. First, Lars, I would say that it's great to have very experienced presidency in this challenging time and very experienced chair, as it was proved throughout our discussion today. I would echo what the Minister just underlined, that we had extremely valuable discussion on the three topics that are to a great extent interconnected, and it just underlines this increasingly challenging context for international trade. Starting with EU-US relations, I really appreciate the strong and continuous support for the Commission expressed around the table today. From day one, the EU has approached the talks with the United States in a good faith, constructively, and with a full intensity throughout. And I discussed with the ministers the next steps for the upcoming weeks, up to the new deadline of August 1st and beyond, and I see the need to focus on four areas. First, negotiations. We remain convinced that our transatlantic relationship deserves a negotiated solution, one that leads to renewed stability and cooperation. Later today, I will continue my engagement with my US counterparts. The EU, as you know very well, never walks away without genuine effort, especially considering the hard work invested, how close we find ourselves to making a deal, and the clear benefits of the negotiated solution. But as I have said before, it takes two hands to clap, hence the second strand, rebalancing measures. We must be prepared for all outcomes, including, if necessary, well-considered, proportionate measures to restore balance in our transatlantic relationship. Our rebalancing measures on steel and aluminium are suspended until early August, and today the Commission is sharing with the Member States the proposal for the second list of goods, accounting of some 72 billion euros worth of US imports. They will now have a chance to discuss it. This does not exhaust our toolbox, and every instrument remains on the table. Third, I see the value in open and ever closer channels of communication with our like-minded partners. Fourth, the EU is doubling down on efforts to open new markets, and we dedicated an entire session to the ongoing negotiations. This morning, I highlighted one major milestone, our fresh political agreement in the negotiations with Indonesia, one of the world's largest economies. Our well-advanced negotiations with Thailand, the Philippines, and Malaysia are other tangible examples of the EU's dedication to strengthen ties with Southeast Asia. We are in intensive negotiations with India, aiming to reach a commercially meaningful agreement by the end of this year, and I have personally engaged with my counterpart Piyush Goyal on more than 10 occasions, and I'm sure many more to come. Next week, I will meet Minister Tani Al-Zeoudi to maintain the positive momentum in our negotiations with the United Arab Emirates. We're also working towards a new form of strengthened dialogue with the CPTPP partners. As you know, this is the group cooperating in Pacific, as we are equally committed to opening new markets and fostering rules-based trade. Our goal is to launch it as soon as possible. And one important piece of homework, and I would like to thank the Danish Presidency for being supportive to this effort, because we can do it only together, and this is to explore specific ways to shorten the time from the conclusion of trade and investment agreements to its actual implementation. I would like us to approach this issue in a systemic way, as the process lasts on average 22 months for EU-only agreements, and I see it as a loss of precious market access for our companies with the markets with whom we actually politically concluded the trade agreements, but it takes us a very long time to actually implement them. Turning to EU-China relations, the third topic of today's discussions, to advance our trade and investment relationship, we need to rebalance it by ensuring a level playing field, and this will ultimately inject much-needed predictability and reliability. One of the most pressing issues requiring solution is export controls on rare earth. Following my meeting with my counterpart, Minister Wang Wentao, technical engagement continues, and we are seeing some progress in the fast-tracking applications destined for the EU market. However, a systemic solution here is still needed. The upcoming EU-China summit will be an important opportunity to discuss these issues, including the reciprocity in our respective market accesses. So to conclude, let me underline once again that the EU is and will remain fully united in responding to the current challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let's open the floor. Please start by stating name and media. And I'll have to say that we have very limited time, so please respect only one question by journalists. Let's start by Camille.
Hi, Camille Gaze from Politico. Thanks so much for the question. So my first question would be to both the Commissioner Šefčovič and Minister Rasmussen. So the EU has been saying, and the European Commission has been saying for quite some time, that all instruments are on the table. But as we near the July 14 deadline, one of the retaliation packages was again postponed. So I'm just wondering, how should we make sure that the European Union is still credible in its dealing with the United States when it comes to retaliation, and shouldn't we escalate to de-escalate in a way? And then the second part of my question would be to know whether you think the time has now come to trigger the anti-coercion instrument in light of the latest U-turn from US President Donald Trump. Thank you very much.
Well, I don't believe in the idea of escalating to de-escalate. I believe in us being steadfast in our approach. And there was a total unified position among ministers that we should be ready to respond if needed. And that's why we start the preparatory work, as the Commissioner just said. There will be a new second package, which will be circulated among countries. And then we leave no, we will come back to the other issues. I mean, we do not want a trade war with the US. We want to avoid it. And we had, I think, many of us, and I want to thank the Commissioner for being very transparent in his negotiations with the US team, the clear impression that we was very, very close an agreement in principle. Unfortunately, it wasn't possible due to this presidential letter, but it is still our major vision that we should reach an agreement. But we also want to send a clear signal that it must be a fair deal for everybody, and if that's not possible to reach, then we will leave out no options, and we know very well that we have a toolbox with a lot of tools.
I totally agree with the description of the President of the Council. What I would add is about the postponement of the measures. As you know, there have been certain deadlines inserted in our decisions, and that they would kind of lead to the imminent triggering of these measures. And we, as We clearly stated we want to use every day, every possibility and every minute until the 1st of August to find a negotiated solution. That's a clear preference of all the ministers. But as it was also very obvious from the discussions today, the 30% is absolutely unacceptable. This is the level which is absolute prohibitive to any trade. So in this case, we clearly would negotiate as intensely as required and as intensely as possible. And of course, we'll try to deliver the results by the 1st of August. But if this would not be possible, it was also very clear today, and I have to say that comparing to the previous discussions we had with the ministers, now it came very clear across the table. So if this is a situation, we have to protect the jobs, we have to protect the businesses, we have to protect EU economy, and we need to go for these rebalancing measures. That message was strongest I've witnessed since we started the discussion with the US, and therefore we'll negotiate first, but we'll prepare at the same time. And of course, as I said, concerning also anti-corruption instrument, everything is on the table, but we'll take it step by step and one thing after another.
Go for Financial Times. Andrew, please.
Thanks. Yeah, Andy Bounds from the Financial Times. Just on there's talk about this communication, greater communication with trading partners. Can you elaborate, both of you, please, on what that actually means? I mean, is this talking about joint response, joint retaliation, or just some kind of group therapy? Thanks.
I think we are not in the need of that one, but I think we are already by now quite battle hardened by the tough negotiations, and you've been following us through several of them, so you know that it's true. But of course, it's very good to compare the notes. As you see right now, all the major trading partners of US got the letter, all of them, and got the letter between 25 to 35%. So it's only natural that first and foremost we want to compare the notes. Secondly, we also want to discuss how this is affecting the economy, the trading partners, and of course we are very obviously also discussing what we can do to trade more with each other. That was a very clear message from the trade ministers today. Work as hard as possible on new market access, use the existing free trading agreements which are there, and we happen to have the free trade agreements now with all of these major trading partners, and we intend to use them to the maximum.
Could I just add that until now our American friends have achieved one deal and 23 threats. So it makes a lot of sense that those of us who are threatened compare notes, as the Commissioner said. And I think we shouldn't underestimate our power. If you look at the figures, I mean, what we have on FTAs on the table substitute a lot in comparison with trade with US. The single market, if we enhance the single market, I think the figures are very well known. If we increase trade among ourselves by 2.5%, it will substitute a decrease in US by 20%. So it shouldn't overshadow the fact that we are going for a deal with US, but we shouldn't underestimate the strength of our position.
Thank you. And I think we'll go for Lise.
Hi, Lise Hesselund from TV2 Denmark. My question is for you, Mr. Šefčovič. Two questions, if I may. First of all, what exactly makes you so sure that there is still a way for these negotiations? You have been negotiating with the Americans for many weeks. So what exactly makes you sure that that there is a possibility that these negotiations will succeed? And also, would you consider in the Commission to take these negotiations to the highest level? Would it make sense to have direct negotiations between Ursula von der Leyen and between Donald Trump? And if so, would you also try and pressure a way forward for that to happen? Thanks.
I think to answer your first question, of course, the last week, as you can imagine, we had very intense and frequent contacts with my counterparts, both Secretary of Commerce, Mr. Latnik, and Ambassador Greer, the U.S. trade representatives, because my impression really was that if it comes to agreement in principle, we're actually very, very close. And what we've been working on is to find the mutually acceptable solutions on the so-called 232 sectors. Then I appreciated that a bit very shortly before, but we got the heads up on the letter, which we will be getting. And at the same time, we discussed that, of course, I have to kind of come back to my institutions, to my president, and then that I will have actually on Monday morning, which has happened, the session with all trade ministers. So it would be good to compare the notes tonight. And this is what we are going to do, to confer again with my partners in US, what is the discussion in US administration, in the White House, and I will share with them our impression and our assessment after this week. And then, of course, we would further explore the possibilities to achieve the negotiated solutions. I mean, my impression was that that was something worth working for, because otherwise you wouldn't spend like 3 months on drafting the agreement in principles and going through 1,700 tariff lines, discussing all details from agriculture to the spare parts for the cars, if this should just end it by one, even though very, very important letter. So I believe that there is still a potential to continue the negotiations, even though, of course, this letter triggered very strong waves in Europe, and I will be very open about that. Concerning the discussion on the highest level, President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, had several contacts, personal contacts on high level with the President of the United States, Donald Trump. She had several phone calls with him as well. And of course, we are talking not only to my counterparts, but also to the White House officials, so the negotiations are going on all levels.
I have to say our minister will have to chair the EU Central America Association Council in a few moments. We have time for one last question, but please be brief. Bloomberg.
Thank you very much. Jorge Valero with Bloomberg. It's a question for both of us. One question. The letter sent by Trump is interpreted as a negotiation tactic to add additional pressure to the EU, and there were several points that were still open before reaching this agreement in principle. So my question is whether the EU is ready to drop these demands on these issues. There were car tariffs, agri-tariffs, and other issues, ready to drop these demands in order to avoid this 30% tariff, or this will be considered as an unbalanced deal, and therefore you will keep pushing regardless of what could be the outcome of it?
I think I will start. As I said, we've been quite close in agreeing the text on the agreement in principles, but there have been clearly the areas where we had quite big gap between our two positions. So I will not go into the detail of these gaps, because I prefer to negotiate directly with my partners, which I will do this evening. And for us, what is absolutely clear is that if you want to land it, and I was very open with my US counterparts, it has to be the agreement which would have the support of our member states, of the European Parliament, and it has to be the agreement which would be acceptable to us. So this would be something on what we would be working for.
Well, just very brief, and not much to add. I think it makes absolutely sense not to negotiate in this open room with our American counterparts. What is important as a takeaway from today's meeting is that the ministers had a very, very clear position. I think when I entered this meeting, and I apologize for the rhetoric, I said if you want peace, you have to prepare for war. It's not that we want a war, but we need to prepare in order to give our Commissioner the strongest possible negotiation position. And I think we managed to achieve that today.
Thank you. This concludes the press conference. Thank you so much.
So I will see you.